Good morning, one and all. Good afternoon, one and all. Good evening, one and all. Depending upon where in the hell you're calling us in from, or where you're listening to us, should I say. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get into this podcast. First of all, we're on YouTube. Just go in to YouTube and search for The Intuitive Customer, and you will get the honor of seeing Ryan and I live. Well, not live, but recorded. You know what I mean. You'll get. What do you think about all this YouTube thing, Ryan? Is it working well?
Well, I mean, I can't imagine anybody actually ever wanted to watch us, Colin, but in the interest of just trying things and seeing what works.
Yes.
No, I know that there are some people who prefer to consume their podcast content via YouTube, and that's great. So we're happy to provide those as well.
Yes, that's the reason that we've decided to do it is because I've been reading up on a load of things, and apparently YouTube is a big channel for podcasts. I have to say I tend to listen to podcasts audio only, don't actually sit down and watch them. But we always talk about segmentation. There must
That's
be a
right.
segment of the market that likes looking at old guys with boring faces. Maybe I don't know.
And that's where we shine.
And
So
we do. We're going to corner that market, mate.
that's
No
right.
problem whatsoever. And the second thing I would just ask you to do is perhaps we could ask you just to go and do a review of the show. When you review the show, it really helps us, A, get feedback, but B, just spread the word because we then go up on the rankings and everything else. So just take a moment and wherever platform you're on, just do a review. That would really be useful for us. And today what are we talking about today, mate? You tell
Today we're
us.
talking about diminishing sensitivity.
Right. Okay. So, as usual, do you want to start and I'll just interrupt you after 30 seconds and we'll just do the usual?
That sounds like a great plan. Let's do that. So, diminishing sensitivity is a part of uh, uh, Daniel Kahneman's findings. So, one of the things that won him the Nobel Prize, and he noted that people tend to be less sensitive to improvements the more things improve, which is kind of not an intuitive way for me to express that. That if we were to imagine a wealthy person and
Yep.
we give that wealthy person $100, that'll feel good. That person will enjoy that. That'll be good. But if we were to take that same $100 and give it to a poor person, then that would really make their day. That
Yep.
would they would appreciate that a lot more. That's the basic wisdom around diminishing sensitivity. The more of something that you have, the less
You
the
appreciate it.
marginal improvement. The less you feel strongly about getting even more of it. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was just trying to think of a sort of I was just, I guess it's not the case actually, but let me say it anyway. It's a bit like if you've got loads of stuff, when you just get more stuff, then it's just more stuff rather than it's a good um, yeah, a good present or something like that. It's yeah. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well.
Yeah, no, that's the same basic idea, right? So the more of something that you have, then the less you appreciate even more of it.
Yeah.
So it's an old idea. It goes back at least as far as like the 1600s. There's this Swiss mathematician named Bernoulli who wrote a famous paper about it way back in the day. But Kahneman like kind of brought it back into modern psychology, Kahneman and Tversky, and said that this is not something that's really important and explains a lot of the way that people evaluate things. Brought it into his prospect theory.
Right.
And so we're going to talk just about diminishing sensitivity today, what it means, what we can do about it, what are the implications. So
So can I jump in with a question?
please do.
Because I'm immediately thinking, does this therefore have anything to do with um, customer surveys in the sense of there's 50 million customer surveys that go out now, and we know that getting the response rate from those customer surveys is a challenge. But I guess if you if you didn't have any of those surveys come to you, and you only had one a month, yeah, I'm now exaggerating to make a point, then you're probably more likely to fill that out if it was one a month rather than getting 500 a month from all those different countries. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I wouldn't call that diminishing sensitivity precisely, but I do think it's kind of in the same general direction where
Right?
we can get kind of like satiated or tired of something
Yes.
the more we get of it, and I think that that is in the same general direction as a diminishing
Right.
sensitivity argument.
It's a bit like commoditization, isn't it?
Yep, that would be another, right? So in commoditization, the argument is that we become less sensitive to differences across offerings. And a
Yeah.
lot of times in markets, that happens because the offerings have all improved to the point where they're difficult to distinguish between.
And
Right?
that must be diminishing sensitivity.
Yes. Yeah. So if they've improved to the point where we're less sensitive to further differences in them, then yes, that would be a function of
Yeah.
diminishing sensitivity.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
So there are two ways we can think about this. One, you can think about diminishing sensitivity on a single attribute, and so the example I use in class when I'm explaining this is a video game resolution. So I show my students pictures of football on the Atari 2600. This is
Right.
an old 8-bit video game system.
Yeah.
And it usually takes my students a minute or two to even figure out what the game is. Like you can't tell that it's football. It has these like little blocky characters, and the football appears to be embedded in somebody's head. Like it's very unclear. And then we move up from 8-bit to 16-bit, and I show them some pictures of like ColecoVision, and now it's a lot better. And we talk about how subjectively the experience of playing those two games would be very different.
Yeah.
And then we go from 8-bit to 32-bit. We get to like Super Nintendo. Now we're starting to add a third dimension. The teams all have like uniforms. It's very clear what the game is. And then we fast forward and we get to the realm of Madden, which is like the cutting edge football games of today. And I show them the resolution from three different eras of Madden. Like I think I use 2010, 2012, and 2014, something like that. And when you see them next to each other, it is still improving. Like every year
Yeah.
the game comes out, the resolution is crisper. Like they have like steam coming out of the players' mouths when they're
Yeah.
playing in winter, but the gameplay is
Yeah.
already so good
Yeah.
that it's not
The
really
the
improving the
yeah.
gameplay
The
that much.
levels of improvement are no
Yeah,
longer
we're almost at like
noticeable.
photorealism now. And so
Yeah.
it's just like it's hard to get excited about
Yeah.
further improvements
Yeah.
as opposed to when it was really terrible,
Yeah.
then small improvements were very noticeable and we really appreciated them.
It's a bit like as you're talking, it's making me think of my iPhone, and
Yes.
it's making me think of um, I mean, when the iPhone was first produced, it
Yep.
was clearly just so different to
Yep.
everything that obviously the world went mad for an iPhone, basically. But now, I mean, I know this is sacrilege because
I
you know
know.
that
I
I
was
love
waiting to see where
Apple.
you were going with this.
Yeah, because I was in a store the other day, not an Apple store, and I was looking to get a new phone cover, and the woman said, "What iPhone have you went?" And I went, "Oh, can't remember the number."
I think that's exactly this phenomenon, right?
Yeah,
So there's two ways of thinking about it. One is improvements on a single attribute, like resolution.
yeah,
Um, the other way of thinking about it is across a bundle of attributes, which is how I would characterize the iPhone. So the iPhone can do all kinds of things, and every new iteration, it improves on some of those attributes, so that the camera gets a little bit better and the screen gets a little bit
yeah,
better, and then it often adds new features.
yeah.
Excuse me. And it's
But
improving and improving and improving to the point where think back to when it first came out. Like the
yeah,
first iPhone just shut down the world. People like
yeah,
lined up for weeks to get it. It was very
yeah,
exciting. And then the next iteration and the next iteration, people were still very, very excited about it, to the point where, yeah, like you, Apple super fan, you don't even know what version of the iPhone you have anymore. And I
yeah,
would argue it's because the iPhone is now so good
yeah,
that further improvements, like do we need a fourth camera on this thing?
yeah,
Like do we need an even sharper
Yeah.
resolution
Yeah.
on the screen. It's
Yeah.
just it's hard to get
Yeah.
more excited about it. Not because it's bad now. In fact, the
Sure.
opposite, because it's so good. It can
Yeah.
do so many things.
Yeah.
How are you going to get me excited about it?
Yeah. I can think of a couple of examples in that from a sort of a customer experience or product perspective. One is just the number of, of megapixels the
Yeah,
camera's got.
yeah.
So I remember when it first, when I've got an SLR, and I never use the bloody thing now, because obviously the megapixels on the camera. Again, I haven't got a clue what they are. All I know is they take really good photos on.
Yep,
I'm now talking about the Apple phone.
yep,
They could probably say, and this is to your point, I double the amount of megapixels, and you go, yeah, I can't see
yep.
that personally. I can't see a difference. I'm sure that someone may be able to. The other one that I was thinking about, I actually cut myself shaving this morning. Yeah.
Mhm.
And now you see that is such an advantage of YouTube. People can see where I've cut myself shaving, and they can't on podcasts, can they? I mean, it's
Well,
just
they can see it, but they don't believe it. They think this is just special effects. This is just we fixed this in post. Like,
yeah. But it's a bit like so I've wet shave, okay,
yep,
and Gillette or whoever it is goes, we've gone from 2 blades
yeah,
to 3 blades.
that's right.
Oh, now we've gone to 4 blades. Oh, now we've gone to I don't know how many bloody blades there are on things now. And you just go, yeah, it's an irrelevance, really. I mean, have you not got a better innovation that you can come up? But sorry, I'm on a roll now.
No, no,
But
these are great examples. This is
but
exactly it.
but I guess the problem is this, isn't it? Is because after the iPhone was launched, that was such a change. And then after every single one was launched, you, it, I started to get disappointed that there wasn't these step changes
Yep.
between the product sets. And I was thinking, well, yeah, there was not much difference between this one and that one. So actually, I don't know if I'm going to buy it. And I think thinking about it, that's obviously played out in the sales of iPhones, which they weren't on such a steep climb as they steep trajectory as they were before, basically, were they?
Yeah, no, this is exactly it. It's just it's hard to get people excited about it, get them motivated to turn in what they have for the next thing, because the thing they have now is already so good, so good. So the way that I teach this is as a curse of improvement. So as you improve your offering, whether it's a physical good like an iPhone, or whether it's your customer experience, like as the experience gets better and better and better, that's good, and people will be happy with that. But it's going to be hard to get them to notice or care about further improvements. Like it's already
Yeah.
so good that
Yes.
like yeah,
Yes.
okay, this is not what I expect.
So let's try and relate that into the customer experience space then,
Great.
um, which I guess would be, and maybe this plays in with it here because again, I was thinking about going and staying at a hotel. And it could be that the first time you stay at a hotel, I don't know, whatever chain, you think, oh, this is pretty good.
Yep.
I like it here. Um, but then, second, third, fourth time, by the time you've stayed there 10 times, you're just going, well, actually, and maybe this is the key. It's met my expectation now. It's actually,
Yeah, so there's two related things that are happening there. One is that you might be changing your reference point,
yeah,
your expectation,
yeah,
um, and so that can happen even if they're not improving.
right,
Look at this from the management's perspective, though. So, say that you're a management of a hotel chain, and you want to improve your customer experience scores. So they're pretty high. People are generally pretty happy, but you're in a very competitive space, and so the experience scores are high with your competitors as well. And you want to improve them. You want to be the best experience. If you already have a very very good experience that you're providing to your customers,
yeah,
moving that needle up a little bit even further is just going to be really difficult. This is just a
sure,
function of psychology. If you were to take over a struggling chain, there's probably things you could do to dramatically increase the customer experience scores right away.
Yeah.
and like the easy fixes, the low hanging fruit. When you're up at the top of that curve, when things are going very well, there's no more low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
We need to like, it's really hard to nudge it up even further because people are no longer sensitive to those changes.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, that's definitely true. I remember in my career when I was in corporate life, I always much preferred to take over an underperforming team than a team that was a high performing team,
Yeah.
because clearly you could become a hero basically in converting an underperforming team into a high performing team, and the the growth that you could get from a high performing team is not very good.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, I guess that becomes the same within customer experience. And I guess thinking about it, that must be some of the. So I always, in fact, we've just been having one of these. So we got a call from a new potential client a few weeks ago, and I was chatting to them, and they're really what I would call very transactional and very so for us, you've got naive, transactional, enlightened, and natural on this sort of maturity curve. We've done podcasts on this before about how customer centric the organization is, and I get really excited when I'm talking to organizations like that,
Hmm.
because I know
Yeah.
they don't know very much about
Yeah.
customer experience.
Lots of room for improvement.
Totally. And
Yep.
I know that we can go in there and make a bloody big effect, and get lots of revenue and everything else, and improve the experience, because they just don't know what they don't know basically. And as long as you can turn the lights on in the right way and get them to realize why they need to make the changes, etc., which is a challenge in itself, then you can have a really big effect upon those organizations.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. I use an example in my teaching, which I love, which is I don't think I've used this example in the podcast before, but it's a picture that somebody posted on the internet of a box of frozen pizza. Have I used this example before?
I think you have. I can't
Oh, okay.
remember it though.
Um, I may have talked about it when we talked about expectations.
Right,
But it's a he took a picture of the pizza after he'd taken it out of the box, and it was just he was so excited that the pizza actually looked like it did on the box. Like
right.
the box had a pizza with a lot of
Yeah,
pepperoni. The pizza actually had a lot of pepperoni. Like that is an area in frozen foods where performance is so bad that
yeah,
just giving people even something even close to what they might expect is a delight. It's seen as such an improvement. If you're to like contrast that with like eating at a 4-star restaurant, um, it's already so good that people aren't going to notice further
yeah,
smaller improvements very much. It's such a great experience that
yeah,
further improvements are really hard. They're very
yeah,
difficult.
yeah. And I guess the other challenge then is the investment needed.
Yeah.
So I was thinking as you were speaking about Disney. So Disney has obviously over the years provided a good experience. Haven't been to them recently, I have to say. Um, but the big change that they made, I think, is in the technology. And again, I haven't been there, but they have this technology now where you can go up to rides and it tells you on an app, and magic wand or something, I think they call it. And in fact, I tell you what, we can do this now. If you know what it is and you're on YouTube, stick it in the comments.
There you
How about
go.
that?
I'm
Yeah.
not sure I'm comfortable with people correcting us in real time as they're watching. It's, it's going to change the entire nature of this.
Well,
Well,
there's an interesting question there, mate, which is how is diminishing sensitivity going to affect us with all of this? So
um, yeah, I mean, so this transitions nicely into the question of what can be done about this. So this is just hardwired psychology. This is just the way people evaluate things. We're less sensitive, the better off things get. Which is why there's this curse of improvement. The more you improve your customer experience, the harder it's going to be to further improve the customer experience. The more you
yeah,
improve your products, the harder it's going to be to further improve your products. And one of the few ways around this is massive disruption.
Yeah.
So, the iPod gets better and better and better, and it's hard for Apple to further improve that experience. So let's disrupt it and put it into a phone, and now it's the iPhone, and that to a certain extent resets some of these expectations. And so
Yeah.
now we can be on that curve again, and then we're going to introduce an iPad, which again will kind of disrupt things a little bit and set us on a new curve that we can climb. I think where Disney can introduce new parks or new technology, as you're saying, that fundamentally changes or disrupts the way that we interact with that experience. I think there's a chance for them to reset that curve so that now we have a new set of expectations that we can climb.
Yeah.
But just keeping things static and further improving the way things are, that we're going to be running up against those limits of psychology.
Yeah. It's interesting because, so I'd be interested in your thoughts on this then, because this potentially talks against diminishing sensitivity.
Yeah.
There was a case study of, I think it was Rank Xerox from a number of years ago, where they were improving their customer experience. Okay. And on a scale of 0 to 5, okay, they found that the majority of the change that they got was from the grade of, or the mark of 4.5 to 5.
So
So
do you
in other
mean the
words,
majority of the change that they
well,
got?
sorry. So the increase in customer satisfaction, the the increase in customer satisfaction went up dramatically from when it was 4.5 to 5.
So
Yeah,
this like predicted return purchase and that kind of thing?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep.
So it's interesting, isn't it? That and again, it maybe talks to that sensitivity piece, which is there is still something that you can gain, even though you're doing well, because 4.5 was actually, well, a score of 4.5 out of 5 is pretty good. But actually, there was still a lot of mileage that they could gain by investing further.
Yeah. It's a great example. I'm glad you raised it. So I don't think it's inconsistent with diminishing sensitivity. So diminishing sensitivity describes an individual's reaction. So in this case, the customer's reaction to an experience. Um, I also, and I'm familiar with other research that's consistent with what you're suggesting here, or what
Right.
you're raising. One way of looking at it is we get the most response when we delight customers, right?
Right.
So when people have kind of a neutral experience, that doesn't
Yes.
really drive them to do
Yes.
anything, right? And
Yes.
so the way people use these scales is sometimes tricky. Like there's a huge positivity bias.
Yeah.
Something like 80 or 90% of all the ratings on Amazon are 4 stars and above.
Yeah.
So it could be that 4.5, despite the fact that it's near the top of the range, it could be that that's kind of viewed as a neutral or an average
Yeah. Yeah.
experience for
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Um,
No, that's a good point,
and
actually.
so to move them up to where they're actually delighted and want to return to us, that might require moving them all the way up to 5. Where I
Yeah.
don't think it's inconsistent is if the experience is positive. So say that 4.5 is in fact on the positive side, it might be very difficult and require extreme amounts of effort to push them up to 5,
Yeah.
even though that is where the payoff is. So
Yeah.
that's how I would kind of integrate these things.
Yeah. And I guess it also depends upon that you go back to what you said earlier about reference points.
Right,
I guess it, because if the whole of the industry is on 4.5,
right.
then you know, the,
That's just
how do
what's
you how do
expected.
you how do you improve? It's a bit like, I don't know, Ritz Carlton or
Yep.
somebody like that. Well, what is it that they do if they're providing a good experience anyway? That's better than most. Then what is it they do that is very different to make them change? And again, I'm sitting here struggling to go, actually, they could do this because most of the stuff they do is pretty
It's
good.
already so good. Yeah.
Yeah. And I
And
guess
and
the danger with that is that, and when we have worked with clients who are doing very well, the bit they're coming from and the bit I emphasize with them is, it's sort of how the mighty fall,
Yeah,
which I guess is the opposite of what we're talking about, which is if you're up there and you're 4.5, actually it doesn't take much to go down.
that's right.
Yeah. And if you're there and you're complacent and all the rest of it, then actually the danger is that you haven't got anywhere to go other than down, basically.
Yeah, and then like the thing to emphasize is that diminishing sensitivity describes a person's subjective reaction to an experience. So if you as an organization have a very good customer experience, like all of your metrics are very high and you know that you're doing very well, you can still improve, right? You can still push those metrics up. Diminishing sensitivity, though, says that it's going to be hard to get a
Harder.
dramatic
Yes.
reaction out of your customers by doing that. But for
Yes.
defensive reasons, as you're saying, it may still be a very good idea to continue to improve, even knowing that we're not
Yes.
going to get a dramatic reaction out
Yes.
of our customers.
Yeah.
So, I
Well,
mean,
if you
I wouldn't recommend that Apple stop improving the iPhone, for example.
no,
Um,
no, because
each
as
new
soon as
edition
that
should be
happens,
better
then
than the
you
last,
yeah,
but you're not going to shut down the news cycle anymore
no.
with each new edition.
Well, and as soon as you do that, by definition, you start going backwards
Yeah,
because your expectations rise and blah 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 blah.
all of
Basically,
that. Yep.
yeah. Good. Okay. Anything else on this?
Nope. That covers the big ideas there.
So let's do our usual bit, mate. So what's the practical advice?
Um, the practical advice is to remember the curse of improvement. So we always want to improve the things that we're doing, want to improve our customer experience, improve the things that our offerings are providing to customers. But we have to remember psychologically the way that people will respond to that, which is it'll still be positive. They'll still react positively to positive changes, but the magnitude of the response will diminish over time.
Yeah.
Um, and that may mean that you need to build into your long term planning large disruptions periodically,
Yeah.
where you're just going to need to really shake things up so that you can get people to notice improvements again.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, it'll just be harder and harder and harder to move the needle as
Yeah.
things keep getting better and better.
Yeah. And in my experience, the practical advice I would give you is one is you've got to set people's expectations internally that
Hmm.
this will happen. Okay. Because if everybody thinks that you're going to get a 10% improvement every month on this, then, by definition, you're going to end up disappointing people. Having said that, in my experience, it never happens every month. And
Right.
getting a 10% improvement would never happen anyway, to be honest with you, because improving the customer experience takes a lot longer to actually implement and to roll out, and for customers then to realize that the change is there. So, in other words, you have an experience, it's normally been okay, and now it's good. You go, oh, that was good. But you actually haven't changed your term of reference really, because you've just gone, well, that was just one out of the last 100 that I've had that was good. And the rest were average. So you've got to have a few of those to even start making the customer go, actually, that has changed. I now have recognised that that's changed, and that takes a period of time. So I would look into that. If you're looking at it from a career perspective, then I would definitely look at, is it an underperforming team? Yeah. Even if you're thinking about it, and if it is, then and you can go in there and be a hero, then that's great from a career perspective. And if it's from a customer experience perspective, then again, just consider what the rest of the organizations are doing. Is this a chance again for you to turn around and go, wow, there's a really big opportunity here if we get customers thinking, um, if we can get the organization improving their experience. And moreover, this whole area of customer emotions, etc. We've talked a lot about products and stuff like that, but you can flip in that disruption, if you like, that Ryan was talking about from being product focused to being more customer and emotional focused. So yes, you keeping the improvements in your product set, but actually the experience is the bit that you're now changing, and that's the bit that customers start to see and start to value. So
love it.
we hope that's been of use. Please, as I said, check us out on the YouTube channel, The Intuitive Customer. And also, if you get a chance, please leave us a review. We would really very much appreciate that. Thanks very much. And talk to you next week. Cheers.